Kirk Frost and Mendeecees Harris finally broke their silence after weeks of scandalous backlash and rumors of a permanent blacklist. However, rather than defending themselves, they did the unthinkable and publicly apologized in desperation, leaving the world wondering if it was too late. The video was meant to clarify things, but tension was high from the moment Kirk and Mendeecees appeared on screen. Kirk's voice cracked. "I never imagined I'd be sitting here like this," Kirk muttered, staring straight into the camera. "But I have to own up to my mistakes." Men nodded, swallowing hard, and then added, "We let many people down, and we just want a chance to make things right." As he started speaking, Mendeecees, who are normally calm and composed, looked visibly shaken. Their careers, reputations, and their entire reality TV legacy, everything of it was online. Fans' reactions to their waning careers were mixed. Some said it was too little, too late, while others were horrified by how broken they appeared. Would this be enough to save them, or would this be the last chapter of their reality TV show? Keep watching because what happened next rocked the industry. Kirk Frost sat in front of the camera, his hands clasped tightly, his typical confidence nowhere to be seen. The weight of everything, the backlash, the threats to his career, and the industry whispers pressing down on him. For the past few weeks, the world had watched their fall from grace unfold in real time. The fight had been ugly and explosive. It wasn't just an argument. It was an all-out war captured on camera for millions to witness. Fans were shocked, producers were furious, and the network had gone silent. Mendeecees' hair looked just as uneasy next to him, like a heavy storm cloud. This wasn't just a routine apology. BL's apology is too late. Producers weigh in on Kirk and MC's fate. Did they just ruin their own careers? Every headline was another nail in the coffin, and now sitting in front of this camera, Kirk and Men knew the truth. There were no calls, no damage control meetings, just the cold, looming possibility that they were done. The industry had turned on them overnight, and the blogs were having a field day. He looked at the cameraman and said, "I never thought I'd be sitting here like this." His voice was low and tense, and he rubbed his hands together before nodding and saying, "Ain't no excuses. We messed up bad." There was a long silence during which neither of them spoke, but the energy in the room was different tonight. This wasn't the typical arrogant, unapologetic Kirk and Mendeecees that fans are used to. Kirk Frost didn't get emotional like this, but tonight was different. The comment section was on fire, and they're only sorry because they got caught. I don't believe a word they're saying, but there were also fans who were upset. We were used to seeing this as two men fighting for their careers, and Kirk exhaled sharply. "We let many people down, including our families, fans, and those who believed in us." His voice cracked slightly. "We're not so sure, but Kirk looks like he's feeling this many, as if they might truly regret it." Kirk shook his head and ran a hand over his face that night, saying, "That night should have never happened." Mendeecees leaned forward and rubbed their hands together. The cameras, the pressure, the emotions, it all got too real. Kirk sighed. "People don't realize what it's like." Even as he spoke, there was an unmistakable desperation in his voice. This wasn't just about making things right. It was about survival. The backlash had been worse than either of them had anticipated. The phone calls had stopped coming, and the producers weren't returning their messages. His expression was grim, but that doesn't make it right. He looked directly into the camera. "We have to own up to it, men." DC took a deep breath. The Love and Hip Hop franchise was progressing without them when Kirk's voice became more solemn. "We heard what people were saying, that we were done and that we weren't returning." NV clenched his jaw and said that we had blacklisted Kirk. To be honest, it had been looking that way. The silence that followed was growing deeper for the first time as they acknowledged that they weren't above the consequences and weren't untouchable. And then suddenly Kirk's voice cracked. "I lost people over this," he muttered. Mendeecees reached over and put a hand on Kirk's shoulder, saying, "Look, man, I know we can't change what happened." His head lowered slightly above a whisper, and when he looked back up at the camera, his eyes were glossy. "I love people," he said. "I thought I had my back, men. DC shifted beside him, looking visibly uncomfortable. This wasn't part of the plan. They were supposed to keep it controlled and focused, but Kirk was getting emotional, and that could either work in their favor or completely backfire. As it appeared that they were regaining some sympathy, something happened that changed everything. The silence that followed Kirk's emotional moment was nearly intolerable, and NYC shifted in his seat, obviously struggling with how to proceed. The plan had been to stay on course and keep things under control, but now things were unraveling. Kirk sniffed and nodded, and I just hope people can see that. Mendeecees cleared his throat and leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You know, when you're in this business, you think everything will last forever. He began his speech in a low, reflective tone, but the truth is that one mistake, one moment, and everything can fall apart. The audience was captivated, and they could sense the vulnerability in Mendeecees' words. We've been in this game for years, men and VCs have continued, and we've experienced highs and lows, but this feels different. His voice faltered a little as he spoke, but he quickly regained his composure. Kirk nodded, wiping his face with his hand. This wasn't the arrogant, overconfident me they were used to seeing. This was a man facing the possibility of losing everything he had worked for. Kirk clenched his jaw and stared directly into the camera. He said, "We know what people are saying. We know the blogs, gossip sites, and fans are all saying the same thing, that we're finished, that there's no coming back from this." Kirk's face was tight with frustration, and that's the hardest part, knowing that no second chance is coming. I don't know, they seem pretty genuine, but it's too late now. They should have considered it before they messed up their fight for their careers. You can see it in their eyes, but not everyone was convinced. Come on, this is just damage control. They're only doing this because they're afraid of losing their paycheck. No matter how much we apologize, regardless of what we say or do, people still want to see us fall. They want us out. The comment section was hopping with reactions. Kirk shook his head slowly, almost incredulously, saying, "They're just playing the victim. We've been through so much already, the fights, the drama, the accusations, but this feels like the end," he said, his voice lowering to a near whisper as he gazed off into the distance, lost in his thoughts. Mendeecees leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "People think we don't care, that we just go around doing whatever we want and don't think about the consequences. But that's not true." The tension in the room was high. We've always cared, but we just let the pressure get to us. Kirk said sharply, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "Yeah, we messed up, and we aren't denying that, but we've also done a lot of good. We've helped people, we've supported our families, and we've been there for our friends," he said. "But nobody wants to talk about that." Mendeecees nodded in agreement. Palpable, and the audience could sense that this wasn't just a publicity stunt or a pathetic apology. These were two men who were fighting for their careers, but despite their best efforts to win over the public's sympathy, there was always a nagging doubt in everyone's mind. Was this apology sincere, or was it a last-ditch attempt to avoid permanent blacklisting? Then, as if things couldn't get any worse, many saw the phone buzz and looked at the screen. "We just got word that the producers are already moving forward without us." The shock was instantaneous. Kirk stood up and paced the room with his hands on his head, saying, No, this can't be happening. We're supposed to have time to fix this." He muttered, "Yo, Kirk, you're not going to believe this." He showed Kirk the phone, his face drained of color as he read the message. "No way." Mendeecees looked back at the camera, his voice trembling. "We're a chance man, and they didn't even wait to hear our side of the story." The room was filled with tense silence as both men struggled to process the news. The seriousness of the situation hit them hard, and their worst fears were coming true. Beck said quietly in a strained voice that they weren't just talking about removing us from the show, they were talking about permanently removing us from the entire franchise. Kirk froze, his heart thumping in his chest, and that's it, man. They made a decision that left the audience on the edge of their seats. The tension was unbearable. Was this really the end for Kirk and me? Was their apology too little, too late? But just when it looked like there was no hope left, M's phone exploded again. He looked at the screen, his expression unreadable. "What is it?" Kirk asked. His voice was shaky. Iz, for a moment, hesitated before looking up at Kirk. "It's from the network." Kirk's eyes widened. "What do they want now, men?" DC swallowed hard. This was their moment, the opportunity they had been hoping for, a slim chance to turn everything around. But the question still stands. Will it be enough? Kirk stared at M, his mind racing, a final chance after everything that had happened, after the backlash, the betrayal the producers had caused. The air in the room changed instantly, and Kirk and Menz exchanged a look of disbelief, their emotions swirling. They weren't out of the woods yet. Moving forward without them, the network wanted to discuss whether this was a game or if there was actually hope left for the men. DC exhaled sharply and continued to hold onto his phone. They want a meeting tomorrow without cameras or social media. Just the executives, and Kirk sank into his seat and rubbed his temples. The MDCs nodded. "Yeah, and if we don't play it right, we're done for real." The tension was unbearable after all the apologies, damage control, and the fate of their careers still hung in the balance. They were pushed to the limit, and now everything hinged on this one last conversation. The comment section was a flurry of reactions, so they had better not mess it up. If the network is still considering them, then perhaps they deserve another chance, but no, it's over for them. This is just the network being courteous before cutting them off entirely. Kirk took a deep breath and leaned forward. "We need to be smart about this. We have to show them that we understand." Mink sighs and shakes his head, but the problem is that regardless of what we say, people have already formed opinions about us. The blogs, fans, and even some of our cast members are waiting for us to fail. Kirk clenched his jaw. "So we need to change the narrative and make them see us as the underdogs in this situation." The BCs raised an eyebrow, and Kirk nodded. "The underdogs think about it. Story right now, they see us as bad guys, but if we can change that, if we can make them believe in us again, we might actually have a shot at DCs. For a moment, that means we have to take full responsibility for everything. No excuses, no dodging." Kirk hesitated, but then nodded. Yes, that's the only way. The situation settled between them as they got ready for what might be the most significant conversation of their careers. The following day, Kirk and I arrived at the network's office with knotted stomachs, a heavy silence filled with unspoken judgment, and unreadable expressions from the executives seated across from them. One of the executives, a stern-looking woman wearing a sharp blazer, folded her hands on the table. "Let's get right to the point. The backlash has been overwhelming. Sponsors are pulling out. Viewers are demanding your removal, and..." The executives exchanged glances, a little taken aback by his directness, and Pat jumped in. "We know we've disappointed a lot of people, and we let the drama get out of control and made decisions that hurt not just us but the show, the fans, and even the network. To be honest, the higher-ups don't think there's a way to fix this." Kirk's throat tightened, and this was worse than he had anticipated. Mendeecees. "However, stay composed, we understand, and we accept full responsibility for everything that has happened. This is our redemption arc, and people love watching us fall, but they'd love watching us rise even more if you cut us. However, if you let us prove ourselves, that's good TV." Kirk leaned in, "and we don't just want to say sorry. We want to show it." The stern-looking executive raised an eyebrow. "So what exactly are you suggesting, and why should we take this risk?" MDCs took a deep breath. There was a heavy silence as the executives processed what they had said. One of the men at the table side tapped his pen against his notepad, saying, "You're asking us to bet on the idea that America loves a redemption story." The Mendeecees nodded, and you know they do. The tension was unbearable, and Kirk and the men in DC could feel the weight of their careers hanging in the balance. After what seemed like an eternity of waiting for the network's decision, the lead executive finally said, "We'll consider it, but you need to understand that this isn't a guarantee. If we move forward with this, it will be on our terms, with no room for error." Kirk and Mendeecees looked at each other briefly before nodding, and we understand that Kirk stated firmly that the meeting ended without a clear decision, but there was hope that it wasn't an outright cancellation, and that was more than they could have asked for at this point. All they could do now was wait and pray. Mendeecees exhaled, "Man, I don't know how that went." Kirk shook his head. "It's not in our hands anymore." But shortly after they left the office, they were confronted by paparazzi flashing cameras, reporters yelling questions, and fans holding up their phones to record. Someone had leaked their meeting to the press, and suddenly everyone on the internet was talking about them on social media once more. Went into a frenzy. Kirk and Mendeecees just had a secret meeting with the network. What does this mean? It seems like they're trying to say on the show that this was all about saving their checks. These men moaned, "Bro, we can't catch a break." Kirk rubbed his face in frustration. "This changes everything. Even if they were considering giving us another chance, they'll think we're leaking this for attention." The paranoia set in. Who told the press? Was it someone from the network or one of their cast members? In an attempt to undermine them, Mendeecees' phone buzzed, and his heart fell. It was an anonymous text that said, "This isn't over. More is coming." His blood ran cold. What did that mean? Mendeecees' hands gripped his head tightly, his heart pounding. Who was responsible for this? What else could go wrong? Kirk frowned when he saw M's expression and handed him the phone. Kirk read the message and instantly clenched his jaw. Man, before they could even comprehend it, their phone began to ring with notifications, and their names were trending once more. The media had already been covering the story of the secret meeting, but now there were fresh rumors that Kirk and Mendeecees' fate had been decided. According to sources, the network had already made its decision, and reality stars had been officially removed from the show. Insiders had leaked damaging information that could permanently ruin Kirk's and my relationship. Felt his stomach drop, damning evidence. What the hell are they talking about? Kirk's mind racing. This is a setup. Someone wants us out, and they're making sure the network has no choice but to drop us. When Mendeecees' phone rang, he answered right away, and Yandy said, "Tell me you're seeing this." "Oh, I'm seeing it," in a sharp voice. "I'm telling you, you need to get ahead of this now. If the network believes these leaks are over, no second chances." Kirk rubbed his forehead, "But we have no idea what." Kirk and I exchanged glances. Going live was risky. If they said something wrong, it could backfire, but if they remained silent, the media would go crazy with whatever fake story was being cooked up against them. They have on us, and we haven't even seen Yandy's side. That's the thing. You don't wait to fight. You control the narrative before they do, men. Mendeecees exhaled, and you go live right now, addressing everything before they can spin it against you. Minutes later, they set up their phones, took a deep breath, and pressed the go live button. As soon as their faces appeared on the screen, thousands of people flooded the street, and the comments section exploded. "It's too late to apologize, so you all better start talking now. Let's hear what they have to say." First, Mendeecees leaned forward, looking serious. Kirk nods, "But what?" "We're going to be honest with you all. We messed up. We're trying to figure out whether the show is dropping you or not on the NBC side, so we're not going to let lies and fake leaks ruin everything we've worked for. However, let me ask you this. Why would we leak our meeting when we're fighting to stay on the show?" Kirk shook his head, thinking about it. "We just had that meeting yesterday, and now suddenly. Come on, man. This is calculated." Fans began arguing in the comments. Damn, they got a point. But what if the network is actually done with them? I really want to see them change their ways. But Mendeecees stared directly into the camera. At the end of the day, we have no control over what happens next. So if the network decides we're out, that's on them. However, we won't sit here and let people throw dirt on our mains in an attempt to push us out. Kirk nodded. "We know that this isn't the end of our story, but one thing is certain. They have shaken things up." The following morning, the network finally broke its silence and released a statement confirming that they were still reviewing the situation and hadn't made a final decision regarding Kirk and mine's future on the show. It wasn't a win, but it wasn't a loss either. The fight wasn't over yet, but just when they thought things were relaxing, another notification appeared on NBC's. The stakes have never been higher, and Kirk and Mendeecees believed that their public apology would be sufficient to turn things around. However, with new leaks coming to light, their future is still uncertain. Will the network give them another chance, or is this really the end of their reality TV careers, and who is behind it? Another phone leak this time involved a voicemail recording, and the voice in the message was Kirk. What he was saying could ruin everything. We want to know what you think about these mysterious leaks that are trying to bring them down. Do you think Kirk and Mendeecees deserve to stay, or should they leave? In the comments section below, let's start a conversation. If you're surprised by these latest twists, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe for all the exclusive updates and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single detail, because we assure you that this story is far from over. Stay tuned because you won't believe what's coming next.